the assignment I have for you is the most important ministering assignment in the ward, and I'm going to tell you why. And he laughed. He thought like, oh, this is your spiel that you tell everyone. And I've actually never said this to anyone except for him.
Hi, this is Steve Weber, and this is another Ministering Moment, and I'm here with Bryce Bender from Tremonton. He's an Elders Quorum president, and we're going to talk about the interviews. But first, I want Bryce to kind of introduce himself a little bit and tell you who he is and what qualifies him to talk about ministering.
Well, I've been an Elders Quorum president for 3 years. I've had 8 counselors during my tenure as Elders Quorum president, done a lot of interviews, talked a lot about interviews, trained counselors a lot on how to do interviews. I've done them poorly, and I think I've done them maybe more effectively. So I'm hoping to share from some of my scar tissue.
I like that. That is well said. All of us have a little scar tissue from our leadership opportunities. So Bryce, we're talking about interviews and how to keep them positive, but also effective, and trying to move the needle as far as our effectiveness as being ministers. And so just share with the audience what's been working for you and how what's been your experience from the beginning kind of to where you're at right now.
Yeah, so I guess if I'm going to start with a story of what not good looks like, I remember when I was first set apart as the Elders Quorum president, I had a brief 40-minute meeting with the outgoing Elders Quorum president, and he kind of went over the ministering list and said, these are where there's a lot of opportunity to improve. These are the handful that are working well. And so, you have the stewardship, you have the keys, so mix it up as you see fit, right? And I felt very much, and there was plenty of families actually who weren't assigned because there was a boundary change that happened at the same time. So there was a lot of creating of new companionships that was needed. And I felt this pressure, and I hope any Elders Quorum president or Leaf Study president that listens to this doesn't feel pressure to just get the assignments done. Sometimes we have it as a task on our to-do list and we just want to get it done. And I hope after I'm done sharing 2 stories of what bad looks like and then what good looks like, I should say what better looks like, people will understand it's better to take your time and do this right instead of just blitzing through it. So in the beginning, when I was brand new green, I thought after spending many, many hours at the computer and on my knees next to the computer and trying to figure out assignments, I had them ready and I printed out all the slips and they were approved. And I took them to the quorum meeting and briefly talked, we had a very short lesson. And then I said, we're going to have an ice cream social. I made homemade ice cream. That's something we do in our family. We like to make homemade vanilla ice cream. And I said, come get your bowl of ice cream and your ministering assignment. And so we just handed these things out like candy on Halloween. Okay. Some of them were left over from their previous assignment because it was a ward split. So some people weren't affected and a lot of them were new. And for me, I felt great. We had this, and after they handed out the ice cream and the papers, I said, find the people on your list if they're in this room and go and introduce yourself, and I'm hoping in one fell swoop, we can just cross pollinate and break ice. And maybe that happened for 5% of the assignments, right? I think mostly people just took their slip, took their ice cream, talked to the people they were comfortable with, right? Especially since it was a new ward boundary or reassignment. So there already
most people didn't know their neighbor or didn't know half the ward then. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was kind of like this half-see with a lot of move-ins, a lot of new move-ins. So that made it also more uncomfortable, right? And for me, it felt like this great box checking moment. And I felt this pressure. People probably feel this pressure if you have any boundary change or something, I've got to get these assignments done. I've got to get them made and I've got to get them out, because the sooner people have their assignments, the sooner they can minister. And what I'm here to say today is they're not going to do it unless the way you deliver the assignment feels inspired and is inspired, right? And the way I described on how I did it was not it was the efficient way, but not the inspired way.
Well, like you said, we're always looking for the quickest way to get from point A to point B. And, that's clearly it. Just to pass them out like you're dealing a deck of cards and get it to the people that the assignment belongs to. But so what did you do differently over time?
So over time, I learned I was like, why isn't this bearing fruit? Well, it turns out, there's that old phrase like, you say jump, I say how high, right? In other words, if I just say, here's an administering assignment, a lot of us are saying, what do I do? Right? They don't know what the expectation is. They don't know the how high. And so what I found very effective is, after kind of going through realizing this isn't working, I'll tell it with a story. We had a brother move into our ward about 2 months ago, and I went over to meet him, brought a little treat, introduced myself to him and his wife, and found out like these people are the type to take a ministering assignment head on if it's presented properly. And I asked him if he'd be willing to have an assignment. He said he would. I went back about a week or two later, went and brought an assignment to him, and I said, Mason, the assignment I have for you is the most important ministering assignment in the ward, and I'm going to tell you why. And he laughed. He thought like, oh, this is your spiel that you tell everyone. And I've actually never said this to anyone except for him, right? But in my mind, it is a very important ministering assignment. And I said, it's the most important in the word, and I'm going to tell you why. Because you only have two families, and one of them, the brother is going to pass away this year, right? He has ALS, and he's just going to continue to go downhill. He can't be with us on Sundays. He's going to need either the sacrament brought into him, or currently he's authorized to do it for him and his wife, but eventually he won't be able to do that. So before that happens, I'm going to need you to quickly befriend them. And what this is going to look like is being in their home multiple times a month. Doesn't mean you have to be there a long time, but just be in the home with them, because that's where they're stuck. Okay. And so I painted this picture of what it's going to look like to minister to this brother and his wife that are at the end of life season. And then he has another brother that he ministers to, family that he ministers to, but specifically the brother is a teacher in the priesthood, but he's in his mid-30s, and he's a part member family. And I said, you can imagine, and he's wanting to come back to church after a long time, and he has this momentum. And so I said, I think you would be great to minister to him. But when I zoomed out, I said, you can see, Mason, how family A and family B, for different reasons, are going to be in every single ward council agenda. And so I'm going to want you to be in contact with them nearly weekly, and text messages are free. So please, every time you have any sort of interaction or experience, send me an update, return and report. That way, when I go into those meetings with the bishop and the Relief Society president, or a ward council setting, I know the latest. And by you doing your ministering, you're representing me, you're representing the bishop, and you're representing the Savior Jesus Christ in the home of those families. And that's what this is all about. Now, which one do you think went better, Steve? The ice cream in the slip of paper, or what I just described with Mason?
Obviously, the one with more information, and especially for the assignment with the gentleman that was passing, or that was near passing away. I mean, there's a sense of urgency there that the brother must have understood, especially with your detailed explanation of the fact that, hey, we're going to be talking about this family every single time we get together in ward correlation. So I've got to side with the second. It's much more effective to give information and share the details that because if you don't know anybody, if you don't know the family personally as an elders quorum president, then the job for the ministering brother is to get into the home and get to know them and report back anything that they can find out. But when you've got details, you can put the ministering brother so far ahead of the curve as far as helping that family. He doesn't have to learn from the first floor. He's already on the roof because of the information that you've given him. So I love that. I love that example.
And I love getting updates nearly weekly about how things are going with checking in on this part member family who's now meeting with the missionaries, and there's awesome potential there. And this family that needs extra love,
So that's one brother. How are you doing that now with every companionship? Are you sitting down with every companionship and going through that kind of detail with that kind of information and uploading to them as much as you know? Is that how you're using those interviews?
So it's gotten easier for me to start fresh, right? Like I explained, for most of the quorum that was here 3 years ago, I didn't start in the most effective way with the ice cream and the slip of paper, right? Now, we've had a lot of new move-ins. There's tons of new construction happening in our ward boundary. So every time I have someone new coming in, I've evolved to the approach I just described to you. Now, for those who are heritage, who I maybe didn't have the best first interaction, I level set with them in a ministering interview once I realized how much more effective it was working when I gave them, this is how high to jump. Not just here's what's happening with the families, figure out, pray about it. Sometimes that's the answer. But oftentimes I know, because I've been doing this for a few years, oftentimes I know what the needs of the family are. For example, another brother who was ministering to a member of the bishopric who seemed like they were doing all as well. And I said, this member of the bishopric has 5 young kids. They have a lot going on. And your companion is an Aaronic priesthood holder. I think your Aaronic priesthood holder companion and those 5 kids that are ages 13 and younger would both be extremely benefited by you going in there missionary style, saying a prayer with the family to bless their home, and sharing a 10-minute message about a principle of the gospel, faith, repentance, baptism, whatever it is, right? Whatever you feel inspired to share. Can I challenge you to do that for the next 3 months? And just tell me if it feels canned or if it feels good. 2 months into it, that bishopric counselor came to me and said, whatever you're doing with ministering, it is awesome. Like, he came forward. He said, I wish we were better at doing family home evening, but sometimes it's just hard. And now it feels like when ministering comes in, we have a little family home evening lesson. And that's exactly what I want to be doing. He's like, that's what I want to do as a father. But sometimes when an external force comes in, it forces everyone to circle the wagons, right? When you're wrangling 5 young kids.
Okay. So what I keep hearing is that you're setting expectations for the ministering companionships before they go in to meet with a family, or as the relationship continues and as you gather more information during these interviews, you're being inspired to challenge them to do extra things. More and more, I'm hearing that people are pushing back against challenges or expectations. Are we putting too much pressure on a companionship to set expectations at a higher level?
I think it's very much case by case, right? Like I know among people who are in our sacrament meeting, for example, there's probably like a third of them who are like us listening to this podcast who are trying to minister as Christ-like as we can, and then there's maybe about a third who aren't really sure where they fall with their testimony of Jesus Christ or testimony of Joseph Smith or whatever, and they might not be as warm to this, right? And so people are all across the spectrum, and so that's the beauty of the ministering interview, is its opportunity to, especially here in Utah, I have no excuse to not be face to face with a brother or companionship, depending. I do both, just depending on the schedule situation, but to be face to face and figure out where are you at? Like, where are you with your own progress? Can I nudge you? Can I prod you in and challenge you? Where much is given, much is required, right? That's taught us. And so you can kind of see who's being good shepherds over the least of these that they've been assigned, and can be challenged to go, the extra mile, and find those that have a little bit more opportunity and pair them with the greater need, right? So that takes some shuffling and some figuring out. And obviously, if you're a brand new Elders Quorum president or Leaf State president, you don't know the word as good as you will in 2 years and 3 years. But don't be afraid to adjust when things are just stagnating, right? Make the adjustments needed. And it takes more work, but it feels so much better when there's something happening because of the ministering efforts.
Well, and I don't want to take the spirit out of this, because I think it's really important to, as you embark on a new round of ministry interviews, I think especially for new Elders Quorum presidents, it's important to remind them in this podcast to ask for discernment, ask for revelation while they're in these interviews, because the Spirit's going to direct them and help them understand how much more this brother can handle, or in the case of sisters, how much more the sister can handle on her plate. Sometimes people are maxed out, and I get that. But sometimes we can put the Lord first over other things in our life just a little bit for an extra 15 or 20 minutes to make contact with this family that needs that extra tender, loving care, that needs that extra phone call. And so I think it's important to not forget to listen to the Spirit while in the middle of these interviews, because the Spirit will direct us, especially with the keys that we hold in these interviews, to ask the right questions, to challenge them to the level that they can handle, and also find out from them what's worrying them. I asked you before we started filming if there are questions that you ask that you feel like help you in that interview. What are some questions that kind of move the needle for you? What are questions that you ask or have asked, maybe even just once, that has moved the needle for you with a certain companionship?
Yeah. And before I get there, I want to go back because our good prophet President Oaks has taught about good, better, best, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so by no means do I want people to think now the new responsibility added to the handbook by me is that the elders quorum president or Relief Society president has to tell them exactly what to do. That's not what ministering is supposed to be, right?
No.
The higher and holier is that they're in there and they know their families. A shepherd knows his flock and knows the needs, right? And then can discern. The recommendations are very helpful. I made the analogy, jump, you say how high. The how high is just to get in the door, to break the ice, to make the friendship. And then in subsequent interactions through ministering interviews, it's thank you for doing what I felt was like the first step. What do you feel like the second step is? What do you feel like the third?
There you go.
What are you impressed to do, right? And maybe it's something completely outside the realm of what I know, because now guess what? Now that ministering brother has more information than I do. And good President Nelson taught that good inspiration follows good information. And so hopefully they're all about the ward, gathering that information. And it doesn't just have to be me that knows it all. And I have one more story here because I know I like podcasts with stories. So today, like literally 45 minutes ago, I just finished up doing some yard work for a brother who has a baby in the NICU, and they're driving an hour to be with the baby in the NICU every single day.
Wow.
And his ministering brother lives in a townhome, and that's important, and I'll get to it in a sec. He reached out to me and he said, I keep feeling impressed that I need to do some yard work for the brother I minister to, but I have a townhome. I don't have a lawnmower. I don't have a weed eater. I don't have this stuff, but you do. Can we do this together? And I said, yes, I'd love to. So this is an example of him discerning, seeing a need, knowing the situation of the family, being in contact, and then just seeing a need and be like, let's just go over. Let's go over after work today and mow the yard and get it taken care of, trim the trees. And we did that for 2.5 hours. And it was a great experience to do ministering with a ministering brother who felt that. He's like, I've been feeling this for weeks, and I just felt like I couldn't do it. And then I realized, no, I'll ask the elders quorum president. He probably knows how I can get the resources. So that's the idea, is that when we ask him to jump, it's nice to say, start this high, but then let the Spirit guide. And I think that's what President Nelson meant by higher and holier, is that Spirit guides exactly what's needed.
Well, the only thing I would caution you as a former elders quorum president is that you can delegate that extra help to somebody else when you're getting too busy, because again, you're shepherding a lot of shepherds. So anyways, but I love that example. And again, we have a whole quorum to turn to for resources, for lawnmowers and weed whackers and whatever else we need to fulfill our ministering assignment. More and more, I'm hearing people on podcasts and in the real world talking about shame and how we've got to be careful about making people feel ashamed that they're not living up to expectations or magnifying their calling the way we would magnify their calling. Help me find the line between making somebody feel guilty or inspiring them. Can you help us identify how to navigate that?
Yeah, I can try. I think it's just like you said just a moment ago, that I have a lot of shepherds, under shepherds, if you will, that I'm trying to manage and help. And I think if we're able to, just like a shepherd knows his sheep, a shepherd probably also should know his under shepherds who are also knowing the sheep, right? And so I need to understand kind of what stage of life people are in. So I just shared a story about a brother who's running every which way with the baby in the NICU. I'm probably not going to hound on him super hard in his ministering interview. It might be more of just like, how's your family, dude? Like, you're going through it.
Right.
You had this baby at 29 weeks, and by some miracle, by a real miracle from a miraculous heavenly Father, the baby's okay, right? And it's progressing, but it's been a long emotional road. So he's probably not the one that I'm just going to, really say, hey, jump
Push
a little
hard on.
higher,
Exactly.
push hard on, right? But just like the example of the shepherd knowing the under shepherds, you'll know who has more opportunity to give. And I really like encouraging people through scripture, because then it doesn't just sound like it's my idea. So can I share? This is Mosiah 18. And he commanded them that there should be no contention one with another, but that they should look forward with one eye, having one faith and one baptism, having their hearts knit together in unity and in love one towards another. And if I share a principle like that, and it's not always that one, but if I share a principle of the idea of Zion, I think all men want to be called to a higher purpose. And if we can use ministering to help them feel like we're trying to create a Zion-like community, just like is explained in this verse in Mosiah, we want our hearts knit together in unity and love. Would you like to be a part of that kind of a community? Of course, right? You know what? I need your help with that part of the community. Into building it. There's these families that you may not know, but you will love them, right? And they may not know that they need to be part of this community, but when you show it to them, they're going to want to be with us, not just at activities, but they're going to want to come back on Sunday, right? Like, I know they will, right? And so I think when I go to try and encourage and invite them to go the extra mile, if maybe their current approach is, oh yeah, I sent them a text and they have my number, right? Going the extra mile by painting the picture of Zion, who's not inspired by that, right? Like, if the tribe of Ephraim blood in me is just pumping when we're talking about building Zion. Like, I want to invite all to come together, be a one heart, one mind, knit together in unity and in love.
I'm excited about your enthusiasm. I think this is great. And I think it's really important to just remember that most people want to help. Most people want to help. They just don't know how. And I love the way that you're coming into these interviews prepared to give your quorum some ideas on how they can magnify their calling, magnify their stewardship there. So I appreciate what you're doing. Just a couple more quick questions. When you're in the interview and you don't know how the family's doing, and you're relying on the ministering companionship to fill you in, and they say that they don't know how the family's doing, that they haven't made contact and they don't know how the family's doing, where do you take the conversation from there?
It sounds like a cop out, but again, it's discernment, right? Like, if I just barely gave them the assignment a month ago, I might re-challenge them. Hey, I encourage you to make, I say IRL, which means in real life interaction. Go find them in real life. Show them your face in real life. That's something I always say. I might just re-extend the invitation. Now, if it's been a little while, and again, if I'm discerning that there's a lack of training or a lack of confidence, I'm not afraid, and I encourage my counselors to do this too, to be like, hey, this week I've got some free time Thursday evening and Sunday after church. Would either of those times work for you or which of those times works better for you to go and we'll knock on their door and introduce ourselves, and I can be their companion. And there's a little bit of this, like, we're going to make something happen this week, type of nudge, but it's like, I'm going too, right? Like, I'm going with you. So it's not like I'm just saying you have to do it. That's worked well in the past. And sometimes it's just breaking that ice. I think there's like this, the friction is highest with ministering when we don't know the family. And then it gets way, 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 way down. We hear those stories in general conference, or we hear them in sacrament, fast and testimony meeting about the family that you ministered to for 10 years, and you saw their kids go on a mission, and you saw them come back, and you helped them through that cancer treatment, and it was amazing for everyone involved, right? And it's just like, man, like this is my family. This is like an aunt or an uncle or a brother and a sister. Like, that's how I feel about this family that I've ministered to.
Yeah,
Well,
you're
the
sometimes
friction
even
is,
closer than you are with your extended families. You're sometimes much closer.
yes, yes. And, and the friction there is zero, right? The friction there
Right.
is absolutely zero, because you would do anything for that brother, that sister, that family. But the friction is highest in the beginning because you don't know them. And so sometimes it behooves the presidency to go out and go on splits and take them. Let's go knock on doors and let's introduce ourselves and have some IRL experiences that can reduce that friction level for the next time. And then it'll get lower and it'll get lower. And then in 10 years, they'll be sharing their testimony in fast and testimony meeting about it.
I love that. Yeah, I have one family that I've ministered to for 16 years now, and we are like family, and I can ask them anything. I can ask them the most probing questions when I'm with them, questions that their own family can't ask them. But because they understand my stewardship over the family, they're never offended by the most personal questions that I ask, because they know it's coming from a place of love. They know it's coming from somebody who truly cares about them. When you say friction, I would say awkward. I would say it's awkward at the beginning, but it gets less and less awkward and more sincere as the months and years go on. So one last question, and this is a personal question. What do you feel is the most important thing you've learned as an Elders Quorum president that you want to leave behind for other Elders Quorum presidents about ministering?
About ministering. Elder Gong used the phrase ministering to the ministers in a talk 3 or 4 years ago. And that's really been the key to being able to invite men to go a little further, right? I think, we're 8 years into ministering. And so by this time, everyone has created in their brain what it means. They have their own definition. It's not the handbook definition, right? They have their own definition of what they think ministering is, and it's formed on their experiences. It's formed on maybe some teachings they picked up here and there. It's formed on how they've been ministered to. And some people do not like what that definition is. Some people are okay with it. But I think it's important to reshape that definition to be higher and holier. And I think the way I haven't always been successful at it, but when I've been successful at it, it's been because I've built a real relationship, IRL, in real life, face to face, via ministering interviews, via hiking together, via whatever it is, right? And we've built that bond to where when I say, hey, like, there's a real opportunity here to bless this family. And I know on the surface, everything looks fine, but let me tell you what I think would really bless them. Right. And like, for example, that story with the bishopric counselor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever it may be. Or let me introduce you to a family who you've never seen at church and I've never seen at church, but this is what I can glean from their record. And I want you to return and report in 2 weeks and with more information. Right. But when I've built that, like when I've got money in that relationship jar, I can cash it in when it's needed. And I think that's the job of the Elders Quorum president and the Relief Society president, is to build community, to build Zion, and you do that through relationships. And then when you build that up, you do it to then train everyone to go out and do it with each other, right? And so that's what I think ministering to the ministers is.
That's well said, perfectly said. I think that those Elders Quorum presidents, Relief Society presidents, need to understand that all of that takes time, and it's the most rewarding investment that you can make, because it just comes back over and over again in love and blessings. And when I say blessings, I don't mean you'll be prospered in the land. I mean just the love that comes with the mantle that you hold over the people that you serve. It's just that's the most rewarding part about it, is this overwhelming sense of love that Heavenly Father shares with you, that He has for those children of His. And I love what you're doing. Keep up the great work. I'm thrilled to see what's going on in Tremont right now. You're
And
an outstanding example of an Elders Quorum president.
well, thank you. And I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. Real quick, I'll add to what you said, and then I'll kind of share my closing thought here. When you talked about blessings, to me, the biggest blessing is feeling like I'm part of Zion, right? Like I have a place here, and 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 these brethren know they have a place here because we have this bond. Like I know them, they know me, they know each other, and it feels like home. Now, granted, if you were to come to our ward, you might not feel that because you haven't invested in it, right? But by golly, if you were to move into our ward, you would be right sucked into this culture, and you would have that opportunity to be a member of Zion, and have your heart, like it says here, hearts knit together in unity and in love one towards another. Now, when I said standing on the shoulders of giants, I loved your book, and for anyone who hasn't
Thanks.
read, Home Ministering. I encourage it. And not only did I read it, I have 3 counselors, by the way, in my presidency. I
Great.
read it through the whole. I read through the whole thing, and now all 3 of my counselors have a copy of it. And we've done it over 3 months worth of presidency meetings. We've been doing a book club. So we broke the book into 3. We broke the book into 3 sections, and the first 15-20 minutes of our presidency meeting, we're just talking about ministering what we gleaned from the book. And they've all given glowing reviews, and I'm grateful that they're behooving me to read this book. These we had another ward split, right? Our ward's been growing a lot. So we had another ward split in November. And so I called 3 brand new counselors. And so I felt like this opportunity to train them. Like I feel like I'm at the end of my mission, I'm dying, and I need to train up the next generation. And so I have 3 counselors, and I'm trying to train them up with the little bit that I understand about ministering. But a lot of it has come from principles of that book, and just digging in and trying to understand what the scriptures teach about Savior and how He would minister.
Well, I think that's really important. When I was an executive secretary in a BYU student ward, and the bishop that I had, his name was Mike Allender. His father-in-law was Neil A. Maxwell, and Neil A. Maxwell told him, he said, "Your most important responsibility is to teach these kids how to be leaders when they go off into their real wards." And he said, "I want you to train them how to use the handbook." And I'll never forget him. I mean, that was 40 plus years ago. But that was probably the most important lesson that I learned. Was my role as a leader is to train other people how to be leaders. For me to learn my responsibility the right way, and then train others as I go, and hopefully leave the ward in a better place after I'm done serving. And so it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing, and your ward's going to benefit. Your ward's going to look at you and say, "I'm standing on his shoulders." And so just keep up the good work. You're doing a great job, and I'm so happy for your ward. It's just fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining, and I'm going to invite you back. We're going to talk about other things down the road. So again, thank you so much, Bryce.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, we'll see you. Well, thanks for watching that episode. I hope you enjoyed it. We learned a lot of great things from Bryce, and he's doing some great things up in Tremont, Utah. For more information, you can go to our website at homeministering.com, check us out on social media, or pick up the book, Home Ministry in the Process of Perfecting the Saints. If you come back on a regular basis, we will have more and more videos. We've been a little inconsistent, but we're getting more consistent. This is a one-man show, and hopefully you're getting some great ideas about how to be a better Ammon-like shepherd. So as always, just show up and show some love. Your families appreciate it, and more importantly, the good shepherd appreciates that you're taking care of his flock and feeding his sheep. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.